Today, we're looking at a blue ink by Zenzoi Sky Blue. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, as always, there's timestamps down below so that if you're in a hurry, you can skip around. But if you got the time, check out the entire video. Also, if you're interested, you can follow me over on Instagram. And if you're new here, I would invite you to subscribe. I do a new ink review daily. In order to make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into this cross Bailey with a medium nib to write for a day and to take the notes for this video. I standardized my first writing sample by using Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper on all of the tests that I do. I do use other papers, and some of those will show up later in the video. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in cartridge form. And to make sure I keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairfontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is darker than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 13 seconds to dry. Medium is just a tad darker than the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 20 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both shows no color variation, and we get none. And Tomoe River with no bleeding, normal ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is darker than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 18 seconds to dry. And medium is a tad darker than the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, and 29 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both show no color variation, and we don't get it. And Rhodia with no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. The extra fine is darker than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 14 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 22 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both are showing no color variation, and we're not getting any. I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see that this is a true blue. It's pretty light unless it's all gathered together, which is the way it's showing in the chromatography. Now the one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And we do see a line forming at the bottom of this chromatography when it's been allowed to set for 10 minutes. But for the most part, most of this ink is really pushing away. The most interesting thing is that line on the bottom is much more turquoise than the blue at the top, meaning this may be a turquoise and a blue mix. Not exactly what I'm seeing in the first chromatography, but it shows in a second. Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page and how hard it may be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, I feel safe using this in a note-taking situation if I want to go back and highlight because it had no real effect on the writing. Great. Now water's lifting all those darkest tones but leaving that turquoise that we saw on the bottom of the second chromatography. Pen flush, you start to see the white of the paper being broken through, so it's really breaking this ink down. Now I did need to use pen flush to get this entirely out of my converter. The 1/3 bleach solution is completely obliterating it, but I didn't need to use it. I test viscosity or flow by using a tilt test that I've linked in this video. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Zenzoi Sky Blue has a viscosity of 3, making this just a little bit drier than normal. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done on Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. I average those. Now, for the inks I've tested, I have found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Zenzoi Sky Blue has an average dry time of 19 seconds, making it normal. Instead of finding inks that look like Zenzoi Sky Blue, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I went for a nice pink, and I chose Krishna's Bauhimia. The second writing sample is done on Levenger, Franklin Christoph, and black and red paper. Here what we see is Levenger paper. Now, Levenger paper has no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is a tad bit darker than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, and 10 seconds to dry. Medium is a lot darker than the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, and 16 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both, they're showing us no color variation, and we don't get any. Franklin Christoph paper. There is a lot of bleed in the medium and the stub. It is coming through a little bit in the extra fine, but not too bad. More ghosting with the extra fine, of course, with the medium and the stub. It does not touch the page underneath, so you can use the next page, but you couldn't use the back of the page. The 1.1 has a lot of feathering all over it. Consistent, tiny feathering all over. And in words like sky, not so tiny. No spread, halo sheen, no shade. The extra fine is about the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen. No feather. It has spread. It went from the extra fine to about a medium. No halo sheen, no shade, 11 seconds to dry. Medium is much darker than the extra fine. It has feathering all over it, just like the stub. No spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade, 18 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both show us no color variation, and we're not getting it. Black and red notebooks with no bleeding and no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is a tad bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade, 12 seconds to dry. Medium is much darker than the extra fine or stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade, 18 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both show us no color variation, and we didn't get any, and that is all that I have for writing samples. So what do I think of Zenzoi's Sky Blue? There is some color variation depending on the pen you use it in, and there's no shading, but this is, in my opinion, the best ink out by Zenzoi. Good job. So what nib and pen give the best writing experience with this ink? While I prefer the tone from a much wetter pen, I did find that dry stubs put down the closest to a sky blue tone, at least the sky blue that I know here in Florida. If you've made it this far and you've enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I'm going to remind you to subscribe. Thanks for watching.